My wife dumped me for a richer man. She never expected what I secretly built for decades. The opulent restaurant, bathed in the soft glow of Venetian chandeliers, hummed with the murmur of affluent conversations. Oriana, resplendent in a silk gown that shimmered like liquid moonlight, raised her crystal flute, a triumphant smile gracing her lips. Across the table, Theron, her fiancé, a man whose charisma was as undeniable as his tailored suit, mirrored her mirth. Their laughter, a little too loud, a little too self-satisfied, cut through the refined atmosphere, yet it was directed, with surgical precision, at the man seated opposite them. Silas, unassuming in a simple, well-maintained suit, merely took a slow sip of his water. His gaze, calm and unblinking, met Oriana's. There was no flicker of anger, no trace of the despair she so clearly expected. Only a profound, almost disconcerting stillness. A quiet certainty resided within him, a knowledge that transcended the superficial display before him. He observed Oriana's animated face, a mask of perceived victory, and noted the slight tension around her eyes, a subtle tell of the insecurity she perpetually sought to outrun. Theron's preening posture, the way his hand instinctively smoothed his lapel, spoke volumes of a man building his identity on outward show, not inner substance. Silas had seen this dynamic play out countless times in his analytical models, a predictable pattern of human behavior. To new beginnings, Silas, Oriana declared, her voice dripping with a faux sweetness that barely masked the cutting edge beneath. To freedom from the mundane. From the ordinary. She gestured vaguely, as if dismissing an invisible cloud of dust. Her hand moved with a practiced flourish, a performance for the ambient gaze of the other diners, though they paid little attention. You see, Theron understands ambition. He understands what it takes to build a real empire. Not just algorithms and numbers that no one truly understands. The dismissal in her voice was absolute, a reflection of her own inability to grasp the profound complexities he had so patiently unraveled. Theron chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that seemed designed to emphasize his perceived dominance. Some men are content with the quiet life, Oriana. Others are born to conquer. His eyes, like a predator's, raked over Silas, searching for a reaction, any sign of defeat. He expected to see the resignation, the wounded pride. Instead, he met a gaze that held nothing for him to latch onto, a surface without ripples. But Silas offered none. His expression remained unreadable, a placid lake reflecting a stormy sky without a ripple. He set his glass down, the faint clink barely audible amidst their celebratory din. A deep sense of peace settled over him. This was not a defeat, it was a confirmation. He had always known this moment would come, in one form or another. Indeed, Theron, he responded, his voice soft, even, almost a whisper in the grand room. The quietness of his tone seemed to force them to lean in, to strain to hear, subtly shifting the dynamic of the conversation. Some men build, others merely acquire. And some, Oriana, he paused, his gaze momentarily sharpening, though only she would have noticed, catching her eye for just a fraction of a second, some sow seeds in silence, waiting for the opportune season to harvest. The true ledger, my dear, is rarely visible on the surface. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through Oriana's carefully constructed composure. Oriana's smile faltered, a barely perceptible tremor. She dismissed it instantly, attributing it to Silas's usual cryptic nonsense. Her mind, conditioned to superficialities, struggled to process anything that didn't fit into her predefined categories of success and failure. She laughed again, louder this time, her eyes darting around the room as if seeking validation for her conquest. Oh, Silas, always with the riddles. You never change. That's why we're here, isn't it? Because some of us do change. We evolve. We demand more from life than a spreadsheet and a quiet Friday night. She leaned closer to Theron, pressing a possessive kiss to his cheek. Her touch was a deliberate statement, a physical manifestation of her perceived victory. We deserve the spotlight. As Oriana turned back to Theron, reveling in the moment she believed was her definitive triumph, Silas raised his glass once more, not to them, but to some unseen destiny. His lips curved into the faintest, almost imperceptible smile, a smile that held not malice, but a quiet, ancient wisdom. It was the smile of a man who knew a secret, a profound truth, that remained utterly hidden from those who believed they had already won. The game, he knew, had only just begun, and its rules were about to be rewritten by a hand Oriana had long dismissed as inconsequential. The unsuspecting world, much like Oriana, was utterly unprepared for the silent, colossal force that was about to emerge from the shadows. The path to that opulent restaurant, to that moment of perceived victory for Oriana and Theron, had been a long, solitary journey for Silas. It began not in a gleaming office tower, but in the quiet solitude of his childhood bedroom, illuminated by the cold glow of a CRT monitor. Even then, as a young boy, Silas wasn't drawn to the flashy, visible aspects of technology. He was fascinated by the underlying structures, the intricate logic, the unseen currents that governed complex systems. His parents, well-meaning but conventional, often found his intense focus on circuit diagrams and obscure programming languages perplexing. While other children built Lego castles or dreamt of becoming astronauts or rock stars, Silas dreamt of optimizing global logistics, of creating seamless digital arteries for the world's commerce. It was a dream so esoteric, so seemingly mundane, that he rarely articulated it, even to himself. The quiet hum of his computer, the methodical click of his keyboard, were his companions, his true language. He devoured books on systems theory, economics, and emerging computer science, teaching himself far beyond the school curriculum. A deep satisfaction came from understanding how things worked, not just what they did. He possessed an innate ability to see the invisible connections, the hidden flows of information and resources, a perspective that made the visible world seem, at times, a superficial shell. He met Oriana during their university years. She was vivacious, charming, with a sparkling energy that drew people to her like moths to a flame. She moved through social circles with effortless grace, commanding attention with her bright laughter and quick wit. Silas, introspective and quiet, found himself surprisingly captivated by her effervescence. Her world was so different from his own, a kaleidoscope of social interactions and immediate gratification. She, in turn, seemed intrigued by his quiet intellect, a curiosity born more, he would later realize, from the novelty of his demeanor than from a true appreciation of his mind. She saw him as a challenge, an interesting deviation from the norm, rather than a profound individual. Their early years were a delicate dance of contrasts, her social dynamism against his intellectual intensity. He found her passion for life infectious, a welcome counterpoint to his own often solitary pursuits. She seemed to enjoy the challenge of drawing him out, of making him engage with the external world. He, in turn, admired her effortless charm, a quality he himself lacked. They were two halves of an intriguing, albeit ultimately incompatible, whole. As the years progressed, however, the chasm between their aspirations widened into an abyss. Oriana's desires crystallized into a singular, undeniable hunger for outward displays of wealth, designer clothes, exotic holidays to places like the Maldives and Monaco, an ever larger house in the most exclusive neighborhoods, the approval of a social circle defined by their material possessions. She saw wealth as an end in itself, a glittering badge of success, a means to elevate her status and silence her own burgeoning insecurities. Silas, meanwhile, viewed money as a means, a resource to fuel his true ambition, the silent, relentless pursuit of his grand technological vision. His satisfaction came from building, optimizing, solving, not from possessing. He had started it, almost as a hobby, while working as a systems analyst for a mid-sized logistics firm. His job, though stable and providing him with invaluable insights into the intricacies of global trade, was merely a conduit, a source of income and a cover for his clandestine work. Every spare penny, every waking hour outside of his conventional employment, was funneled into Project Chimera, as he initially called it, a self-deprecating nod to its seemingly mythical scope. He built his first server in his garage, the air thick with the scent of solder and ozone, meticulously piecing together salvaged components bought from obscure online forums and discarded corporate tech. He learned to code in languages that were still nascent, teaching himself the intricacies of global trade, supply chain dynamics, and, most crucially, the nascent field of artificial intelligence. The quiet hum of the servers, the glow of the monitors in the dark garage, became his sanctuary, a place where his vision took tangible, digital form. He often worked until dawn, fueled by lukewarm coffee and an unwavering conviction in his unseen creation. The world outside his garage, with its petty squabbles and superficial concerns, seemed distant and irrelevant. Oriana's dissatisfaction grew like a persistent weed in the garden of their marriage. Her voice, once a melodious counterpoint to his silence, became a constant, grating drone of complaint. "Silas, why can't you be more like Robert? He just got promoted again, another corner office. He bought a new yacht, a real boat. Or Mark, he's investing in real estate, making a fortune overnight." Her criticisms cut deep, not because they wounded his pride, but because they highlighted the profound gulf in their understanding. "You're so smart, Silas, but you're just wasting it." "On what? More of your obscure little projects that don't bring in any real money? People like us, we need to show our success, we need to live it." He would listen, his face impassive, his mind already miles away, navigating the complex neural networks of his fledgling AI. He would offer quiet reassurances, deflect her criticisms with a placid nod, but never once did he betray the true scale of his clandestine endeavor. How could he? How could he explain to someone who valued immediate gratification and visible opulence the profound satisfaction of building something truly revolutionary, brick by digital brick, in absolute secrecy, with no guarantee of success? She would never understand the patience required, the deferred gratification, the almost spiritual devotion to a vision that had yet to manifest in the physical world. Her world was defined by what could be seen, touched, and flaunted. His was defined by what could be built, optimized, and ultimately, transformed. The silence he maintained wasn't evasiveness, it was an acknowledgement of an unbridgeable chasm in perception. The pressure mounted relentlessly. Oriana began to spend more, pushing their finances to the brink. Lavish holidays, designer shopping sprees, exclusive club memberships, each new acquisition seemed to temporarily quell her restlessness, only for it to return with greater intensity. Silas, ever the pragmatist, continued to funnel his surplus income into Project Chimera, often sacrificing his own comfort, even necessities, to ensure its progress. He ate simple meals, drove an old, utilitarian car, and wore clothes that were practical rather than fashionable. Oriana interpreted these sacrifices as Silas's inherent lack of ambition, his ordinary nature, a confirmation that he would never provide her with the lavish life she believed she deserved. She saw his frugality not as discipline, but as a fundamental failing. His quietness, which she once found intriguing, now became a source of exasperation, a symbol of his perceived stagnation. He often overheard her on the phone, subtly complaining about his lack of drive, his unconventional hobbies, words that stung not for their malice, but for their profound misunderstanding of his life's work. Then came Theron. He materialized like a character from a magazine spread, all slick charm, expensive suits, and grand gestures. He moved through the same social circles Oriana craved, spoke the language of immediate success, and promised a world of effortless luxury. For Oriana, Theron wasn't just an escape, he was the embodiment of everything Silas wasn't, everything she believed Silas had denied her. His flashy confidence was a stark contrast to Silas's quiet demeanor, and to Oriana, this was a clear advantage. She saw him as a definitive upgrade, a public declaration of her rising status. When Oriana announced she was leaving, it wasn't a heartbroken confession but a dismissive pronouncement. They were in the living room, the muted glow of the television reflecting in her eyes, flickering across her face like distant lightning. "It's over, Silas," she said, her voice devoid of emotion, almost bored. A hollow ache settled in Silas's chest, not from heartbreak, but from the realization of how utterly alone he had been in his grand endeavor, how truly isolated his vision had made him. I'm leaving you for Theron. He understands what I need. He understands ambition. You'll just keep tinkering in your little cave, won't you? That's just who you are. Stuck. She offered a shrug, a gesture of profound indifference, as if casting off an old, ill-fitting coat. You'll be fine. You always are. In your own way. He remembered looking at her, truly looking, and seeing not the woman he had once loved, but a stranger blinded by superficiality, a person whose values were utterly alien to his own. Yet, even in that moment, a quiet resolve hardened within him. He had chosen his path years ago, a path of deliberate anonymity, of sustained effort away from the clamor of public validation. He had accepted the solitude, the misunderstanding. He had known that true strength often lay hidden, accumulating silently, until the moment of its inevitable unveiling. I wish you happiness, Oriana, he had said, his voice as steady as always, a quiet farewell to a chapter that had long since served its purpose. He signed the divorce papers without argument, without a word of protest or regret. She took the house, the savings, the visible assets, the tangible markers of success that she so desperately craved. He kept his silence, his intellect, and the burgeoning digital empire that was Project Chimera, now meticulously rebranded, its true identity shielded by layers of complex legal structures and anonymous holding companies. It was the ultimate, secret weapon, not a person or a single piece of information, but a meticulously constructed ecosystem, an entire alternative reality built on code, data, and years of unwavering dedication. For Silas, the divorce wasn't a loss, it was a liberation. It freed him from the constant need to explain, to justify, to pretend that his quiet ambition was anything less than world-changing. He was now unburdened, free to dedicate his entire being to the harvest he had so patiently sowed. The quiet hum of his servers, no longer confined to a garage, grew into a symphony of purpose. The years that followed the divorce were a period of intense, almost monastic focus for Silas. Oriana had envisioned him stagnant, precisely as she had left him, a quiet systems analyst, perhaps occasionally lamenting his lost marriage over a solitary dinner, his life fading into unremarkable routine. The reality was a furious, silent acceleration. With the emotional drain of the failing marriage removed, Silas channeled every ounce of his considerable intellectual energy and financial resource into what was now internally referred to as Apex Link. The project grew beyond a mere system, it became a manifestation of his deepest convictions about efficiency, transparency, and global interconnectedness. Apex Link was no longer just a project, it was a living, breathing entity. Its AI, initially a rudimentary collection of algorithms, had evolved into a sophisticated neural network capable of predicting supply chain disruptions with uncanny accuracy, optimizing logistics on a global scale, and identifying inefficiencies that had plagued industries for decades. Silas had meticulously built a team around him, not of flashy Silicon Valley types, but of equally quiet, brilliant engineers, data scientists, and logistics experts who shared his passion for solving complex, real-world problems. They were kindred spirits, drawn by the profound challenge and the quiet pursuit of excellence. They operated from nondescript offices, often with unassuming exteriors in quiet industrial parks, their work shielded by layers of non-disclosure agreements and a deliberately low public profile. They avoided press, shunned conferences, and built their empire one successful client integration at a time, allowing results to speak louder than any marketing campaign. Their motto, unspoken but understood, was "Build, don't boast." Silas oversaw every detail, every line of code, every strategic partnership, his mind a vast, intricate map of global commerce. He found a profound satisfaction in the quiet, incremental progress, the steady accumulation of power not for its own sake, but for the transformative potential it held. While Silas's quiet empire grew in the shadows, Oriana's life with Theron, initially a dazzling spectacle, began to show hairline fractures. Their lavish lifestyle, once seemingly effortless, required an ever-increasing inflow of cash. Theron, despite his outward charm and apparent success in real estate, operated on the razor's edge of legality. His deals were increasingly complex, often involving shell companies, leveraged buyouts, and speculative ventures that relied heavily on market manipulation and aggressive, sometimes dubious, financing. He moved fast, but always in the gray areas, his bravado masking a profound fear of being exposed. Oriana, initially oblivious to the darker undercurrents, reveled in the visible splendor. She hosted extravagant parties at their sprawling new mansion, adorned herself in the latest couture from Paris and Milan, and documented every luxurious vacation on social media, meticulously curating a perfect facade of unblemished prosperity. Her online persona was a testament to her success, a constant affirmation that she had made the right choice. But beneath the glittering surface, a subtle anxiety began to gnaw at her. Theron's moods became more volatile, his phone calls more frantic, his whispers more hushed. She overheard snippets of conversations about liquidity issues, uncooperative investors, and regulatory hurdles. The champagne, once flowing freely, began to taste a little less sweet, the designer labels a little less comforting. She started to feel the subtle, chilling shift in the wind, a premonition of instability. She would occasionally see Silas's name pop up in an obscure industry publication, a brief mention of a small, innovative, logistics company securing a modest contract with a regional distributor. She'd dismiss it with a scoff. Still playing with his little trains, I see, she'd tell Theron, who barely registered the comment, too engrossed in his own escalating financial woes. She interpreted his continued low profile as a sign of his unchanging, unremarkable existence, a confirmation of her wise decision to leave him. The Zeigarnik effect was at play here, her unresolved perception of Silas as stuck reinforced by every piece of limited, public information, fueling her contempt. Her mind refused to acknowledge any possibility that did not align with her preconceived narrative of his stagnation. What Oriana didn't know was that these modest contracts were strategic footholds, each one a meticulously planned infiltration into a new sector, a new market. Apex Link was not merely a logistics platform, it was a comprehensive global supply chain operating system, designed to integrate with and optimize virtually every facet of international trade, from raw material sourcing to last-mile delivery. Silas and his team were building a network so vast, so efficient, that it was poised to become the indispensable backbone of global commerce. They were operating a carefully orchestrated, controlled burn, expanding rapidly but quietly, under the radar, until the critical mass was reached. Their client list included some of the world's largest, most discreet corporations, each benefiting immensely from Apex Link's unparalleled efficiency and transparency. Their success was measured in millions of dollars saved, in seamless operations, in the quiet revolution of global trade. Oriana, increasingly desperate, found herself making subtle overtures to old friends, trying to gauge their financial stability, perhaps even seeking small, discreet loans, cloaked in casual conversation. The polite refusals, the subtle avoidance in their eyes, chipped away at her carefully constructed self-image. She even, on 2 separate occasions, sent Silas an innocuous, almost formal email, ostensibly about a minor administrative detail related to their divorce settlement. Silas, seeing through the thinly veiled attempts to probe his current circumstances, responded politely, professionally, and utterly non-committally, offering no information about his life or work beyond the minimum required. He maintained the carefully constructed curiosity gap, allowing her to believe he was precisely where she had left him, a man of limited means and ambition, a ghost of her past. He felt no malice, only a detached observation of her unraveling. Then came the news that hit Oriana like a cold wave: Theron's largest real estate venture was collapsing. The highly leveraged nature of his dealings meant a domino effect of bankruptcies, lawsuits, and investigations. Their assets were frozen, their credit lines evaporated. The lavish life vanished overnight, replaced by the grim reality of impending financial ruin. Oriana, stripped of her protective facade, was utterly bewildered, unable to comprehend how their glittering world had imploded so swiftly and completely. She was facing not just bankruptcy, but the very real prospect of public humiliation and destitution. The foundation of her existence, built on sand, had finally given way. Coincidentally, or perhaps, providentially, this seismic shift in Oriana's life occurred just as Silas and his team were putting the final touches on Apex Link's public unveiling. The years of silent cultivation had culminated in a platform so robust, so transformative, that it was ready to be presented to the world, not as a niche innovation, but as a fundamental paradigm shift. The global economic landscape was ripe for such a solution, reeling from supply chain shocks and inefficiencies, desperate for stability and clarity. Silas had chosen his moment with the precision of a master strategist, recognizing the precise confluence of need and solution. The stage was set, not just for a technological reveal, but for a profound rebalancing of unseen ledgers. The world was about to see what Silas had been building, quietly, patiently, for decades. The Global Economic Summit, held in the cavernous, glass-encased convention center in Geneva, was buzzing with the crème de la crème of international finance and technology. CEOs, government ministers, and industry titans mingled, their conversations a symphony of power and influence. Oriana was there, not as a guest, but as an increasingly frantic shadow. Theron, his usually impeccable suit now seemed to hang on him with a tired resignation, his face etched with strain, was desperately trying to salvage what remained of his reputation and finances. He was pitching, pleading, trying to secure any last-minute investment, any lifeline, that might pull him back from the precipice. Oriana, pale and drawn, clung to his arm, her eyes darting nervously, sensing the judgment in every glance, acutely aware of the whispers that followed them. She had seen the preliminary reports. The investigations into Theron's shady dealings were escalating, and their assets were all but gone. The air around them felt heavy with unspoken condemnation. Suddenly, a hush fell over the main hall. The lights dimmed, and a single spotlight illuminated the central stage. A distinguished moderator, known for his incisive intellect and commanding presence, stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice reverberating through the vast space, holding the attention of thousands, "we are about to witness a presentation that, I believe, will fundamentally reshape our understanding of global commerce." For over 2 decades, a visionary, working in quiet dedication, has been building a system designed to solve some of the most intractable challenges of our time. He is a man who shunned the limelight, preferring the meticulous work of creation, a true architect of the unseen. It is my distinct honor to introduce the founder and CEO of Apex Link, Silas Vance. Oriana froze. Silas. Here? At this summit? Her mind reeled, struggling to compute the impossible. She scoffed internally, a cynical echo of her old self, clinging to the last vestiges of her dismissive narrative. He must be here as a guest, perhaps some minor consultant given a token 5 minutes. There was no way. Her internal monologue was a desperate attempt to maintain her illusions. But then Silas walked onto the stage. He wasn't wearing a bespoke suit like Theron's, but a perfectly tailored, dark gray suit that exuded quiet confidence rather than ostentation. His posture was straight, his gaze steady, sweeping across the vast audience with a calm authority that seemed entirely new, yet profoundly familiar. He wasn't swaggering, he was simply present, radiating an understated power that commanded immediate respect. The air around him seemed to hum with an unseen energy, the quiet force of decades of dedication. Oriana felt a cold dread begin to seep into her bones. Her perfectly manicured fingers tightened their grip on Theron's arm. This wasn't the Silas she knew. This was different. The man on stage carried himself with a gravitas that spoke of deep accomplishment, not fleeting success. He was utterly transformed, yet undeniably himself. Silas approached the podium, a gentle smile gracing his lips. He began to speak, his voice clear and resonant, filling the vast hall, each word imbued with a quiet conviction. For too long, he stated, a deep conviction in his tone, our global supply chains have been brittle, vulnerable to disruption, opaque in their operations, and inefficient in their execution. We've seen the consequences: delays, shortages, wasted resources, and ultimately, higher costs for everyone, from multinational corporations to the everyday consumer. He spoke not just of problems, but of the systemic flaws he had spent his life observing and dissecting. As he spoke, a massive holographic display materialized behind him, showing a dazzling, intricate web of interconnected lines and nodes. It was a real-time, three-dimensional representation of the global supply chain, a living map of the world's commerce, pulsing with data. Today, Silas continued, his voice gaining momentum, a quiet certainty underpinning every syllable. Apex Link offers a solution. Not just a software, but an entirely new operating system for the world's logistics. An AI-driven platform capable of real-time predictive analytics, dynamic rerouting, autonomous inventory management, and absolute transparency from source to consumer. He demonstrated, with effortless grace, how Apex Link could simulate the impact of a natural disaster in Southeast Asia, instantly rerouting thousands of cargo ships and diverting air freight, mitigating losses, and ensuring essential goods reached their destinations. He showed how it could detect fraudulent activity in a complex international transaction, or pinpoint the exact origin of a contaminated product within seconds. The holographic map shifted and pulsed, displaying a mesmerizing dance of efficiency and control, a visual symphony of order emerging from chaos. The audience, initially captivated, was now utterly transfixed. Murmurs of astonishment rippled through the hall. Whispers of revolutionary, unprecedented, and game-changer spread like wildfire, carried on the awed silence that followed each of Silas's points. Silas wasn't just presenting a product, he was unveiling a new paradigm, a fundamental shift in how the world conducted business. He was showing them the future, a future he had quietly built while they were distracted by the noise. Oriana felt a nauseating lurch in her stomach. Her mind raced, frantically trying to reconcile the unassuming man she had dismissed with the titan now commanding the attention of the world's elite. This was what he had been doing. This was the tinkering in his little cave. The sheer scale of it, the quiet audacity, hit her with the force of a physical blow, stripping away years of carefully constructed delusion. The years of her dismissive comments, her chiding, her casual contempt, echoed in her ears like a chorus of mocking voices, each word a hammer blow to her crumbling self-perception. Theron, beside her, had gone ashen. His jaw hung slack, his eyes fixed on Silas on stage, not with admiration, but with a dawning horror, a chilling realization. He, more than Oriana, understood the true implications of what Silas was unveiling. A system that brought absolute transparency to global trade meant there would be no more shadows for his shady dealings, no more hidden corners for his illicit transactions, no more obscuring of the true ledger that Silas had spoken of. Silas's quiet revolution was about to expose the very foundations of Theron's crumbling empire, not through direct attack, but through the sheer blinding force of clarity. Silas concluded his presentation with a calm, impactful statement. Apex Link is not just about efficiency or profit. It is about resilience. It is about fairness. And it is about building a more connected, more transparent, and ultimately, a more stable global economy for everyone. He looked directly into the camera, his gaze piercing, and a subtle, almost imperceptible shift occurred in his eyes as they flickered, for a millisecond, across the area where Oriana and Theron stood. It wasn't a look of triumph, or even revenge. It was simply the look of a man who had completed his work, who had seen his vision manifest, and who now, finally, stood in the light, revealing the true balance of the ledger. The applause that erupted was not merely polite, it was a thunderous, standing ovation, a recognition of profound genius and monumental achievement. Oriana could only stand there, numb, watching her carefully constructed world shatter around her as the reality of Silas's quiet empire finally, brutally, unveiled itself. The aftermath of Silas's unveiling was swift and absolute, a cascading series of events that ripped through Oriana and Theron's lives like a digital tsunami. The thunderous applause for Silas barely subsided before the whispers about Theron's precarious financial position escalated into public scrutiny. Apex Link's inherent transparency, though not directly targeting Theron, created an environment where his opaque real estate dealings simply couldn't survive. The interconnectedness and data flow provided by Silas's system made it virtually impossible to hide anything. Investigative journalists, buoyed by the newfound clarity Silas's system promised, dug deeper, exposing the intricate web of shell companies and fraudulent transactions that formed the backbone of Theron's empire. Within weeks, Theron's companies were in receivership. Lawsuits piled up, followed by criminal investigations that extended across multiple jurisdictions. The lavish apartments, the luxury cars, the private jet, all were seized as collateral, then auctioned off. Theron, once the embodiment of flashy success, became a pariah, his face plastered across news outlets, no longer for his wealth, but for his extensive fraud. He disappeared from the public eye, reportedly facing significant jail time and an avalanche of legal battles. The silence from him was deafening, a stark contrast to his former bombast. Oriana, left with nothing but the expensive clothes on her back and a mountain of debt from Theron's collapsed ventures, found herself adrift in a world that had, just days before, celebrated her supposed prosperity. The social circles she had so meticulously cultivated vanished overnight. Friends, who had once flocked to her parties, now avoided her calls, their polite excuses thinly veiling their judgment and embarrassment. The very people she had looked down upon, the ordinary ones, now saw her with a mixture of pity and a quiet, almost smug, satisfaction. Her carefully curated social media facade crumbled, replaced by a stark, humiliating reality. She was forced to sell what few personal belongings she had left and move into a small, nondescript apartment in a less desirable part of the city, a stark contrast to the sprawling mansion she had once called home. The taste of victory, which she had savored for years, turned to bitter ash in her mouth. The spotlight she craved had indeed found her, but it illuminated not her triumph, but her profound downfall, a public spectacle of her own making. The silence of her once vibrant life was now a constant, chilling reminder of what she had lost. Silas, meanwhile, handled his newfound fame with the same quiet composure he had always possessed. He gave measured interviews, focusing on the technology, the global impact, and the future vision of Apex Link. He declined personal questions, particularly those pertaining to his past marriage, maintaining a dignified silence on a chapter that was now firmly closed. There was no gloating, no public acknowledgement of Oriana's downfall. His satisfaction was internal, the quiet fulfillment of a vision realized, a long-term strategy brought to fruition. He was a man who understood that true power lay not in public display, but in silent, meticulous execution, in the undeniable force of a well-built system. The tech world, initially surprised by his sudden emergence, quickly recognized his genius. Investment poured in, partnerships blossomed with global leaders, and Apex Link became the undisputed leader in its field, valued not just in billions, but as an indispensable global utility. Former colleagues, who had once quietly pitied his ordinary life, now sought his advice, their faces etched with a mixture of awe and profound regret. Some even subtly attempted to apologize for their past misjudgments, which Silas met with a polite, but firm, distance. He held no animosity, only an understanding that their perception had been limited by what they could see, by the surface of things. His focus remained on the future, on the continued evolution of Apex Link and its potential to further reshape global systems. Months turned into a year, then two. Silas's life, while dramatically altered by his public success, remained rooted in his core values. He continued to innovate, dedicating a significant portion of Apex Link's profits to philanthropic initiatives focused on sustainable development and education in underserved communities, recognizing the systemic issues that needed addressing beyond commerce. He lived comfortably, but without ostentation, his greatest luxuries being the quiet satisfaction of meaningful work and the freedom to pursue further intellectual challenges. He found a profound peace in the knowledge that he had built something lasting, something that genuinely improved the world, not for personal glory, but for the inherent value of its creation. His life was a testament to the quiet power of purposeful creation, a profound illustration of the true ledger. Oriana's trajectory continued its steep decline. Stripped of her inherited wealth and Theron's precarious financial support, she was forced to take on low-paying jobs, struggling to make ends meet. The superficial skills she had cultivated, the art of social climbing, the curation of an image, proved utterly useless in the face of real-world hardship. She was a ghost of her former self, haunting the fringes of the society that had once adored her, now invisible to them, swallowed by the very ordinariness she had once disdained. She never saw Silas again, nor did she attempt to. The chasm between their realities was now too vast to bridge, a permanent reminder of the choices made and the paths taken, of the enduring difference between appearance and substance. The story of Silas and Oriana, though deeply personal, echoes a universal truth. It reminds us that true worth is rarely found in the loudest declarations or the most visible displays of success. It is often forged in the crucible of quiet dedication, hidden perseverance, and unwavering belief in an unseen vision. While the world may celebrate the flashiest and the loudest, it is often the silent architects, the patient builders, who ultimately shape its future. Their triumphs, when they finally emerge from the shadows, are not just personal victories, but profound lessons in resilience, integrity, and the enduring power of substance over show. The greatest empires are not always built with fanfare, but with the steady, quiet rhythm of unwavering purpose, proving that true ambition isn't about what others see, but about what you choose to create, in silence, for the world. If you found inspiration in Silas's journey of quiet triumph and unexpected justice, you're in the right place. Our channel is filled with stories of resilience, integrity, and the powerful lessons life teaches us. Don't miss out on our next deep dive into human nature and the surprising turns of fate. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you're always the first to know when a new story drops. And now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever encountered someone who completely underestimated you, only for your quiet efforts to speak for themselves? Or perhaps, how would you have navigated Silas's path of silent dedication in the face of such dismissive attitudes? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going.